Biden's recognition this past weekend of the Armenian genocide put mass ethnic slaughter back in the global conversation. But for some, the issue never fades from memory. Menachem Rosensaft was born in 1948 in Bergen-Belsen, a Nazi concentration camp turned into a displaced persons camp after the war. His parents somehow survived the Nazis, but his half-brother Benjamin did not. All these years later, Rosensaft has released a book of poetry called Poems from Bergen-Belsen. Our senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wackenheim spoke with Rosensaft recently about his poems, which reflect on the horrors of the Holocaust, along with more recent genocides and the intolerance and hatred that led to them.
First off, Menachem, thank you so much for joining us. I read through this book of poetry, heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching at times, and other times somewhat hopeful. Tell me your feelings on writing this book so many years after the physical experiences, at least, with the Holocaust.
So these poems have been in the making over an extended period of time, and they really are my way of communicating with the dead, relating with the dead, and also in a different dimension, communicating with God, coming to terms with God. So it's my way of coming to terms with an experience that is part of my identity, which is not really relatable in terms of simple historical chronology and facts and events. You do not get the scope of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, or for that matter of any genocide, by simply relating it to so and so many people. 6 million people died.
I want to talk to you about ghosts because it's a very prevalent topic within the poetry in this book. When you're talking about a ghost, are you talking about the ghosts that haunt you and fellow Holocaust survivors? What is the message in that particular term?
Just to be clear, I'm not a survivor. I was born in 1948. I was born in a displaced person camp, the displaced person camp of Bergen-Belsen, which was set up about a kilometer away from where the concentration camp had been. And our generation of the sons and daughters of the survivors are haunted. We are haunted in much in the way that a cemetery is haunted. We carry within us the images, the souls, the ghosts, as it were, of those who were murdered and whom we only know through the recollections that we received about them from our parents. Everything else is left to our imagination.
What is your relationship with God? So many Jews who somehow made it through the Holocaust either turned their backs on Judaism completely, or at least the religious aspect of it. You seem to be religiously connected, but angry with God, at least through your poems. What is that relationship like at this point?
I happen to be a conservative Jew, but I believe in God. But that does not mean that I believe in an omniscient and all-powerful God, because if I did, then how can one believe in a God who knew that millions were being murdered and who could have stopped it but didn't? But then again, there is also an arrogance on the part of all of us, including rabbis who try to say that we know who God is or how God manifests himself or herself. We don't know. We only believe we know, and that is, in my view, an arrogance. There was a Hasidic master, Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev. He was known to be angry with God, but that does not mean a rejection of God. It simply means that one is in dialogue. Look, let me give you an example. We are all familiar, especially when you go to funerals, to Psalm 23. It is a psalm which talks about God, Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. Yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a difficult, very difficult psalm to relate to in the context of the Holocaust. And so my version of it, which is Psalm 23 at Auschwitz. No shepherd, only foes. No festive table, only bitter soup, moldy bread. No green pastures, no still waters, only mud. He is always hungry, she is always cold. Their heads anointed by blows. Shadows walking through the valley of death. Adonai's house forever. That is, rightly or wrongly, my trying to come to terms with reconciling God with a horrific reality and basically saying that God has his place in the debate, just as humans have their place in the debate.
You make reference in some of your poems about the almost ho-hum nature of the Holocaust, not painting Germans and others as these bloodthirsty monsters, but just part of a machinery. You referred to German Guard as one with a bored smile, just humming music as the killing machines roared along.
We do not live in a vacuum, and we cannot simply ask others to be concerned about our tragedy if we are not willing to be equally sensitive to theirs. And you're absolutely right. The perpetrators of the Holocaust were not visible monsters. They were individuals who went along their daily activities and considered the annihilation, the murder of Jewish men, women, and children to be a part of their job. And that is true of others, whether it was in Srebrenica in Bosnia or in Rwanda or today in Myanmar. Genocide does not begin when the killing starts. Genocide begins when racism or religious prejudice or anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or a hatred of any minority is allowed to be expressed and people don't push back.
Again, poems born in Bergen-Belsen. Menachem Rosenstock, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.